Indonesia is drifting back into dictatorship. Under Prabowo, the military is expanding into civilian life, armed with sweeping new powers under the revised TNI law. What was once Suharto's playbook of authoritarian control now risks revival, eroding democracy, crushing dissent, and normalising militarism in the world's third largest democracy. In a speech before inaugurating military troops in West Java in August, Prabowo, the former Special Forces Commandant, proclaimed that Indonesia must strengthen its defences to protect the nation's sovereignty and resources. Prabowo kicked off his presidency with a militaristic boot camp for his cabinet, and now, just shy of a year in the job, the retired general is beefing up boots on the ground. 100 new battalions have been established with plans for 500 over the next 5 years, with new units also for the Special Forces and Marines. The 100 new battalions have been established to assist in agriculture, animal husbandry, and food security, and will not receive combat training. A spokesperson for the Indonesian Defence Ministry said he could not release information about the size of the new battalions. In the world's third largest democracy, the military's expansion and its creep into civilian domains has drawn criticism from observers who say the move carries echoes of the country's authoritarian past. Indonesia threw off the shackles of authoritarian rule in 1998 when Suharto, the country's dictator and Prabowo's former father-in-law, was forced to step down after 32 years in power. As part of the reform era that followed, the doctrine of Duifungsa, meaning dual function and which refers to the role of the military in security and civilian affairs, was dismantled. But bit by bit, it appears to be making a comeback. In March, the Prabowo government passed a controversial law allowing armed forces personnel to hold more civilian posts. In addition to the 100 newly formed battalions created as part of the Army's territorial deployment system, this July, it was announced that the military will begin manufacturing medicines for public distribution, while within the Attorney General's office, a special task force that includes military officers has also been established to reclaim land from expired palm plantations. The deepening omnipresence of the military in Indonesian life signals a worrying democratic backslide, says Maid Supriyatma, a visiting fellow at Singapore's ICEA's Yusof Ishak Research Institute.
Even without the formal dual-function Duifungsian policy, you will see the military everywhere, having influence or control in politics, in policy, in government. They will be doing things that they are not supposed to do, where they have no expertise.
However, the Indonesian government strongly rejects the claim that military expansion signals democratic regression.
The Indonesian military cannot interfere in civilian affairs. They don't even have the right to vote in elections. So these accusations are completely exaggerated. Indonesia is increasing its military capacity to safeguard its vast territory. Indonesia is not just a vast landmass and seas, but also comprises 17,000 islands separated by sea. Therefore, it requires a strong army, navy, and air force.
But analysts note that Indonesia's authoritarian turn began under former President Joko Widodo, and that his successor has continued the trend. The growing prominence of the military in Indonesia, said Supriyatma, was indicative of Prabowo's top-down rule.
Prabowo has a high distrust for the civilian bureaucracy. This feels like something he can do to have more control, to build up the military to influence people, or to scare people.
Indonesia's parliament has passed a controversial revision of the Indonesian National Armed Forces (TNI) bill, triggering widespread condemnation from activists, rights groups, and civil society. Critics warn the law marks a devastating setback for democracy, human rights, and civilian supremacy, raising fears of a return to militarism reminiscent of the Suharto era. The revised law grants the military sweeping new powers in law enforcement, counter-terrorism, and civilian affairs. A move seen by opponents as blatant militarization of Indonesian society. Human rights advocates argue the legislation threatens to roll back decades of democratic progress, entrench authoritarianism, and institutionalize abuses by eroding the separation between military and civilian roles. Concerns are amplified by President Prabowo Subianto's own military background and ties to the Suharto regime. Observers say his leadership, combined with the military's newly expanded mandate, creates a perfect storm for democratic erosion and the normalisation of authoritarian rule. Civil society groups, students and rights defenders have staged protests and issued urgent appeals, calling for diplomatic, economic and political pressure on Jakarta to repeal the law. They argue the government has chosen militarisation over the democratic aspirations of its people.